Hello everyone, my name is Michael Hughes. I'm the Senior Manager of TASL, and today we are going to be looking at an overview of the 2025-2026 TASL Academies during the 25-26 TASL cycle. So just quickly as a disclaimer about generative AI tools, the state of Tennessee does not permit the use of these AI tools in their state meetings, and so you just need to make sure that you do not have these in the actual meetings themselves. So today we're going to look at state statute requirements. We're going to talk a little bit about the recertification pathway that was wheeled out last year and its continuation on this year. We'll then switch over to the initial academies, both the principal AP and the supervisor initial academy. At that point, I'll talk very briefly about just information on guidance for ILL advancement to the ILLP, and then I'll provide information about current district supports that I'm providing. All right, so in state statute, it does detail that administrators are expected to attend the academy once every 5 years. And so due to that, that's why the recertification academies were implemented last year. And so that means that every year, or excuse me, every 5 years, once every 5 years, an individual in a TASL mandated role must complete the TASL Academy. And so this year, there are going to be a combination of 4 different academies, just like there were last year. We had the initial Principal AP Academy, the initial Supervisor Academy, the Recertification Principal AP Academy, and the Recertification Supervisor Academy. Now, what does this mean just to everybody? Well, priority enrollment will be given to any instructional leader with 5 or more years of TASL mandated experience who has not completed an academy in the past. So that's specifically for the initial principal academy. So if they've been in a mandated role and they've never done an academy in the past, they have to go the route of initial, and priority enrollment will be given to those at years 5 or more, and then we will work our way down from there. To ensure that administrative supervisors and TASL manager roles can meet the recertification requirement, our office has instituted a TASL recertification pathway that we detailed and rolled out last year. And then lastly, I want to make a note of about TASL exemption. Instructional leaders marked as TASL exempt will continue to be exempt from needing to complete the academy once every 5 years. So if they qualify for TASL exemption, which as a reminder, TASL exemption is when they have 15 years or more in a TASL mandated role. It does specifically have to be a TASL mandated role. They then can request exemption, and then the district, the director of schools or the superintendent designee in TN Compass has to sign off on that. And at that point, it gets sent over to our office for review. So who attends which academy? So for the initial Principal AP Academy, those who have never completed any previous TASL Academy equivalent and are currently serving in the role of either Principal or AP would enter into this academy or enroll into this academy. So again, that's for people who have never done an academy in the past that are currently a Principal or an AP. The initial supervisor is those who have never completed any previous TASL Academy equivalent and are currently serving in a TASL mandated instructional supervisor role. So those are more of your district level folks. And then the recertification academies, if they've completed an academy or an equivalent in the past, so prime example of an equivalent in the past would be the GASL Academy that took place back around 2018 or so. And so if they've been in an academy equivalent in the past, then they are currently a principal or AP, then they qualify for the recertification option. And then the same is true for recertification supervisor. If they've done academy in the past and they are currently in a TASL mandated instructional supervisor role, they would qualify for recertification supervisor. Now, a common question that we got last year, usually it was pertaining to supervisors, was districts asked if they had someone that is currently now an instructional supervisor at the district level, but when they completed their academy in the past, they did an initial AP or initial principal because that was the role they were in then. And so the question often that arose from this was, do they qualify for recertification, or do they actually have to do initial supervisor since the academy they did previously was actually tied to being a principal or an assistant principal? And the truth is, if they've completed any academy, initial academy in the past, they qualify for their current role in recertification. So in that instance, they would qualify to be able to complete the recertification supervisor academy. Now, before we go into details about the Recertification Academy and how it's structured and how it's set up, I did want to talk or just briefly touch on the results from the survey that I had released last year to those who completed the Recertification Academies. And so we had over 1,100 administrators complete either the Principal AP or the Supervisor Recertification Academy last year, with 900 of those individuals completing the survey. And so we got a lot of valuable feedback and a lot of things I was able to really listen to and to kind of really learn from and to implement for this year going forward. So you see the four pie graphs. I know it doesn't give you the percentage, so I'll just kind of give you a rough number on each of them. So the first category was about relation to their responsibilities as an administrator. Over 90% scored it at expectations or greater, or 3, 4, or 5, in terms of, what was the material in the academy and how it aligned to their daily responsibilities. The second category was about the task that it was asking them to complete in the academy itself. And so over 90% of administrators scored it at expectations or greater, that the task aligned with what they were expected to do as administrators in their buildings or in their districts. Where you see the biggest discrepancy is the section where it talks about time allotted. In this one, we basically asked them to, detail to us if they felt like they had been given enough time to complete everything in the Recertification Academy. And so, because they were given a semester, it basically started in September and it went through basically the middle of December. And one of the number one, so the percentage there is about 75% said at expectations or greater, and about 25% had it at a two or one, so below expectations. And so one of the main pieces of feedback we got was about the number of the walkthroughs it was asking people to do as the pre-work. And so based on that feedback, we've made some adjustments there for this cycle going forward, and we'll talk about that here later. And then the last one is communications. It's basically, it was asking them to detail, their rating on how much information they were provided, were the email correspondence, in a timely manner, was it beneficial? Uh, the office hours, were they beneficial if people attended them? And so that one actually had the highest percentage. Over 95% had it at expectations or greater. And so there you can basically see that the first category over 90% at expectations or greater. The second category over 90% at expectations or greater. The third category 75% at expectations or greater. 3, 4, or 5 there, the same. And then the last one, communications, over 95% at expectations or greater. So based on all this feedback that we got, we did make a few technical adjustments. So like, for example, I talked about the number of walkthroughs that were being asked in the pre-work for the Recertification Academy. That has been reduced. And so it's basically just going to ask them to do one for each module instead of more than one. I think that was what detailed in the actual modules themselves. And so we've made some technical adjustments there. There was also a technical issue with one of the sections. I believe it was course 1, module 2, in particular for the Recertification Academies. There was an issue with like a video and what was being asked in the content. And so we've made those corrections as well. But for the most part, the majority of the content will stay the same based on the feedback we got. So the actual structure of the Recertification Academies will be the same as it was last year, and the content will be the same. We've just made technical adjustments and then some adjustments on the time allotted side to hopefully yield better results there. So the recertification academies are only for TASL mandated individuals who have already completed an initial academy in the past. So just reiterating that information. Both the supervisor and the principal AP academies will be delivered asynchronously through learning modules on the Teach All or LMS system. So that part's not changing. These will be fully asynchronous. Your administrators that are in these academies will be able to complete them at their own pace. And again, the time frame will, like, I will keep the time frame about the same as I did before. So it will be early September through middle of December will be the length of the recertification academies. And they will obviously, due to that, they will only be open during the fall semester, and they should only take one semester to complete. Individuals who complete the recertification academies will be awarded 7 TASL credits upon their completion. And registration for these academies opened on July 21st. And so right now there's a 4-week enrollment period that's taking place. And so the closing date for enrollment is August 15th. So with that being said, all the TASL configurers that I have contact information for should have received an email at this point with the actual links to the initial principal and the 2 recertification academy enrollment forms on there. All right, so now we're going to switch over to the initial principal AP Academy. This one is for individuals that are currently principals or assistant principals, so one and the same there, who have not already completed an initial academy in the past. I did not want to change the cycle on this. I know everyone's gotten used, it's always been one full academic year, and so it's both the fall and the spring semester, so that will remain the same. And also the initial supervisor will be the same in that it's only one semester. So the initial principal AP will be fall and spring, and the initial supervisor will only take place in the spring. Individuals who complete an initial academy will be awarded 14 TASL credits, and the registration period for this opened also on July 21st. And so it is for the principal AP Academy, excuse me. And so with that being said, we're in that 4-week window for the initial principal enrollment forms to be submitted. The initial supervisor academy is the only one that has not been sent out yet, and that enrollment will open on November 3rd. That's when those enrollment forms will be sent out to the list of TASL configurers that I have. Now, the focus of the initial Principal AP Academy is to connect instructional best practices to current school operations. And so we're really going to be focusing on evaluation and observation tools. That's what we did. That's the structure that it was last year. And so we're going to continue that structure going forward for this current cycle. All information learning sessions will be conducted virtually. And by doing that, it allows us to have developed a strong partnership with CORE. And so many of these sessions will actually be led by the specific region's core consultants that are specialists in the areas of that content. So Q1 is going to focus on evaluation models. I know I have team on there because it's predominantly the one that's used by most districts. But I'm fully aware that there are districts that do not use the team evaluation model. Rest assured, if your district does not use the team evaluation model, your administrators that are in this academy, they will not have to complete evaluations based on team. They'll be able to use what is your district's approved model to be able to meet their requirements in the academy. So I want to make sure I get that out there. But in general, I know most districts use team. Q2, it will be focused on the ELA IPG, and so the virtual session for those meetings will actually be led by the ELA core specialists for the different core regions. And then Q3 will focus on the math IPG and its implementation, and that will be led by the math core regional specialists as well. And then Q4 is a summative that kind of focuses on everything that has been covered over the year. For the initial supervisor academy, it's similar in that it's going to focus on the 2 IPGs. Now, granted, obviously, we're not going to focus on the evaluation tools at this part, the models, whether it's team or project coach or anything like that. And so Q1 will focus on the ELA IPG led by the core regions ELA core specialists. And then Q2 will focus on the math IPG led by the ELA math core specialists. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about ILL advancement. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. I just want to kind of hit it at a high level. So at the conclusion of the initial Principal AP Academy, resources will be provided to those that complete the initial Principal AP Academy about the requirements to advance their ILL to an ILLP. There's a misconception that the only requirement they have to do is complete the academy, and that's not really true. There's actually several requirements they have to meet as detailed in licensure rule for advancement of the ILL to ILLP. And the area I want to focus on is section 3, which you see here in this picture, and it's not just what's highlighted. A lot of people just like you have 2 years of experience, and that's not really what's written there. It's 2 years of successful experience. as demonstrated by overall evaluation ratings of at expectations or higher during the most recent validity period of the ILL. And so what that's really meaning there, because it says overall evaluation ratings, it is tied to LOEs. They do have to have LOEs of at expectations or greater for 2 years on the current validity period of the license. And so an ILL validity period is 3 years. When an individual renews the ILL, that effectively starts the validity period over, and they would have to earn those 2 years on that new validity period of LOEs of at expectations or greater. And so this can cause issues if an administrator submits a renewal transaction instead of advancing if they qualify for advancement. So just one thing is if you ever have anybody that has questions about whether they should renew or advance or if they meet requirements for advancement, you can always reach out to the TASL inbox for clarity on that. And so district support. So one of the main things that I'm doing this year to try to help districts, specifically with their TASL Academy requirements for their TASL mandated people, is I'm actually offering individual district meetings. And so I have no problem scheduling one of those with you all now. I know the date on there says by July 11th, but you do not have to adhere by that. That was just kind of an initial date over the summer. The truth is I'll gladly schedule any meeting with any district that would like for me to kind of review with them their administrators and the role or their academy requirements that they would need to complete. I'll also cover briefly about the TASL recovery plan, how that process works in the event that you have someone that needs to make up credits. And so if you have any questions about anything, feel free to email me or email the TASL inbox, and we'll get you set up from there. All right, and so with that being said, if there's any general inquiries that you have about the information that's been provided today, or if you have administrators that have questions about the academies, they can always go to the TASL inbox at tassel.information@tn.gov. But there's technical issues in terms of T Encompass, you would actually need to reach out to T Encompass support, and you see those email addresses up there on the screen. I want to thank you all for your time. And if you have any questions, obviously you can email me or you can email the TASL inbox. But I appreciate everyone and what they do on a daily basis. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.